Hey, friend, welcome back to Mindset Medicine. I am Dr. Tanya Berfield, and I am so glad that you are here. Today's conversation is one that I didn't want to end. My guest, Rubina, founder of Inner Design, and she is doing work that is so aligned with everything we talk about in this space: burnout, creativity, nervous system, breath, and what it actually means to stop performing and start living. We talk about burnout, what burnout really looks like when it's quiet, not the dramatic crash, but the slow disconnection from joy. We talk about creativity as a regulating tool, not a talent or an output. And we talk about why you cannot mindset your way out of a body that believes that it is under threat. This one is going to land. Stick around. My friend, not broken, disconnected. That's what I keep coming back to, because most of us are walking through life thinking that we need to fix ourselves, do more, be better, when really we've just gotten disconnected from who we are. Welcome to Mindset Medicine. I am Dr. Tanya Berfield, speaker, mindset strategist, and someone who believes that real change happens when we bring together science, soul, somatics, and a dash of hippie woo. This podcast is all about coming back to yourself, about learning how to know yourself, trust yourself, align your life, and lead with confidence, integrity, and real power. Some weeks, it's just you and me, diving into mindset shifts, nervous system work, and the patterns that keep us stuck in overthinking, overfunctioning, and burnout. Other weeks, I'm sitting down with people who are doing something just a little bit better than we are, whether that is leadership, parenting, money, health, or just how they're showing up in their lives. Not because they have it all figured out, but because they have found something that works, and we get to learn from that. So if you have been feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or like you are doing everything right, but something still feels off, my friend, you are in the right place. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mindset Medicine. I have a special guest with me today. It is Rubina, and she is the founder of Inner Design. I think that this will be super fun because we speak the same language. We have a lot in common in terms of the work that we are doing and how we are supporting people. And so I think this will be a really interesting conversation, as they always are. So Rubina, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me here. I'm really happy to be here. And I think this conversation is so needed right now.
I completely agree. I just shared with Rubina in my other world, I'm doing this all week long, a very similar conversation with college students. And as I mentioned, some of them really are interested and others couldn't care less and don't have the time for me and would prefer to not be there. But it just kind of resonates back to me that this is such an important conversation, and the earlier we can hear it, the better. And the more that we can take away from it, the better. So I'm just really thrilled that you're here. So why don't we just get started with a quick, why don't you tell us who you are? Tell us all about Rubina.
So it's interesting. I also have that overlap in education with
Mm,
high school and college, like the early parts of college, early years of college, community college. And
fantastic.
the similar thing, we were just saying how, mindfulness, it's so needed, but not everyone wants to hear it or they're not ready to practice it. And my hope is
Exactly.
always like planting the little seeds, and one day they may
Mm-hmm.
sprout and
Mm-hmm.
they may hear my voice whispering
I'll
peacefully
be,
and calmly.
I'm coming into your dreams, whether you like it or not.
Yes, that, take a deep breath. So that's a big part for me. But the unique part of my work is that I take creativity as the entry point. And so I think a lot of times we consider creativity as talent or output, and we're such a production-based society. Creativity can be such a regulating tool. Something simple as journaling or sketching, movement, music. I mean, it doesn't even have to be it's definitely not performative in the context that I
Mm-hmm.
use it. Dancing
Mm-hmm.
around your room or singing in the shower. Those are ways to, deal with stress. Arranging something in a beautiful way, using your imagination, making something with
Mm-hmm.
your hands. All of these practices helps us to move stagnant energy and actually restore vitality. And there's a whole neuroscience backing to it. And so I think that mindfulness, of course, helps us with those pathways neurologically. And so does creative expression. So I like to say the opposite of burnout is not just rest, It's aliveness. It's a vitality.
That a lot. What drew you to this work?
This work was my work. It's kind of like all of us, we come to it because we needed it.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was a creative professional in the entertainment industry out here in Los Angeles for about a decade. Real burnout, right? It's 14 hours to 17-hour days, turn around, go back, go home, sleep for 8 hours, come back around,
Mhm.
tight deadlines, cutthroat, and it was creativity on demand, the production part of it, which
Right. It's
was
not the
not
same though.
it's not yeah, it's not what I dreamed of, like, entering that, I'll say it that way, right? It's not
Mhm.
wasn't what it was all cracked out to be, but it was basically a place where I found my creative expression, going back into the mindfulness journey and finding that, it was just a lifeline for me, really, honestly, creativity and
Mhm.
mindfulness in order for me to just get back on track and deal with the burnout that I face, and I know so many people do as well.
I'm just curious, what did burnout look like for you?
It wasn't really obvious. I thought, "I'm doing
Mhm.
fine," like, trekking away,
Yep.
running, and it was like this slow, quiet thing inside of me that just felt, like, completely unsatisfied. "What am I doing this for? Why?
Mhm.
Why am I pushing myself? What am I getting out of this? Well, great, the pay is great, but, it was so unfulfilling, and I had
Mhm.
to really question that part. This is something I really loved to do. I came into this with so much vibrancy and so much vitality, and where did that go? And so I think the people that I deal with also have that same thought. They're having those same words in their head and they're just like, this was supposed to be my life passion. How did I
Mhm.
get here?
Mhm. Yeah, and I've been through it a couple of times, and achievement is, like, sort of my arch nemesis. It's something that's really important to me, and when we do this kind of work, the further you get into the work and the more healing you do, the more you recognize why, and so I'm really at this point right now where achievement is a thing, and when I reflect back to the couple of times that I have worked myself through burnout, what I recognize is there's, like, this quiet quitting, almost like, when an employee who doesn't leave the job, but sort of just stops, like backs off the quality of work that they do and the amount of work that they do. And so it's that sort of quiet quitting. You see it in relationships too. So there's that. And then there's this feeling of like, I really just don't care about the outcome of this. Like, I'll do my minimum, I'll do the work, but I maybe don't care like I used to care about the outcome here and making sure that, the level of work that I would normally consider my standard, it's just, we're nowhere close to that. And so I'm doing the best that I can, but it's definitely not the standard that we had been at before I got to this point. Like, does that feel like that resonates for you as well?
Completely. That completely resonates. And some of it, that performance aspect of it starts
Mhm.
affecting and costing us our health. It costs us our
Mhm.
mental health. It's that, be good, do good, be useful, be impressive, be agreeable, be strong, all of these things. I think especially as women, those are things we're conditioned with, right?
That's
And so
exactly
it's
where I
just
was gonna
like,
go.
I grew up with the awareness and the connection to presence through mindfulness, meditation.
Mm.
I grew up with that. So as soon as it started to slip away from me, I was just like, wait a minute, something is really off.
Mhm.
And I think that presence, really, it was that. It was just like losing access to what was present. And
Mhm.
I think a big thing that I see a lot of people as we climb that ladder is the decisions, decision exhaustion or
Mhm.
whatever they call it, right? It's like
It's true.
you just feel the burden of making decisions, and the small choices, I always say, are what make our whole life. We're based out of our decisions our whole life. And so
Mm.
when you start to miss access to it, you're like, well, I just won't do the things that make me feel good or that are good for me. I'm just not doing them. All of that kind of goes down that
Mhm.
slippery hill.
Mhm.
But I think that, it was really the question of like, can I do this without abandoning myself? Can I still
Mhm.
be valuable? What does it look like to be valuable and not overperforming? And I
Mhm.
think that was really
Yeah.
a key click that, switched for me, or I should say, the light switch that turned on for me.
Right, right. That makes good sense. And I think that too, that's like that narrative that you were talking about, like somebody created this story or this expectation, and then you add to that boundary setting. And so if you can figure out what it is that makes you happy, how you get to that thing, and then learning how to not step beyond that, that's the story. That's the work that we need to be doing.
It absolutely is, and I think that,
Yeah.
again, if I have to say it for on behalf of all women, maybe myself, I'll
Mhm.
say, I
Mhm.
feel that when a woman stops performing and starts, inhabiting herself, her own journey, her own path, her own direction, like guided from within, then her power really shifts and then you really see the changes.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So I have talked about this in a couple of different ways, but like the tagline across the bottom of my website is stop performing and start living. It is exactly that. And I have talked about this. So when I turned 50, there was a huge shift. I did not grow up with that awareness of presence, which I'm really jealous that you did because man, my life would be so different, I think. Or maybe it would have not taken me as long to get to the point that I'm at. Mine actually came through raising 3 children and recognizing some of the things that they needed. And as a woman, it was easier for me to find those things for them than it was for me to recognize what I needed so that I could be better for them. And so that's a whole tangent that we could go down. But what I find is the same sort of thing that we do that thing where we're just like we're putting ourselves out there. Oh, where I was going was when I turned 50 is I was like, where was I going with that one? But when I turned 50, I came into this power of like, I am done with everybody else's stories. I'm done caring what you think about what I want. That's what's going to make me happy. Not that I didn't continue to serve and take care of and, I'll do all those things. I still have kids at home. I still have a really healthy marriage, but there were things that I had to stop doing and other people had to start picking up. And there was a confidence that came along with that I feel like had something to do with that age. Like most people or a lot of women are like, oh no, I'm 50, I'm old. And I'm like, yeah, I'm 50. Look at me. I know things. Like I have this ability to do things that I never believed in. And it's almost like where my imposter syndrome flipped. And so I came out of that and came into that, no, this is who I am and this is how I'm going to show up for the world. And so I think that you're right about that alignment and the power that comes with that.
I love hearing that. I'm just right around the corner. I'm turning 50 next month, just right around the corner. And I actually saw something really funny, really cute on social media today that was talking about the 50-year-olds. And it was all these women and they were like hiking, but then they were dancing, they were grooving to something. And it was just really cute. And
We're
it said,
doing it. Yeah.
and it was like, we're the adolescents of the old people. And I was like, yes, it really resonated. I was like, yes, this is when we feel so energized and just like you said, you're ready to like take on your
Mhm.
life. We've gone through our 30s and our 40s where we were discovering different aspects of our life and now it's like it's not it's not the giving up. I feel like it's like a whole new energized opportunity,
Yeah,
And
it's like a
so
rising up. It's for me, it's not a
I
giving up,
love
it's a
that.
rising up. I'm ready to
Yes.
start, like, let's get this started.
Yes, yeah, and I think that
I
that's
love
that's
that.
part of the thing I see a lot of times, there's a lot of women that I see, all of
Mhm,
us who look capable or polished, successful,
mhm,
seems like, dependable on the outside, but internally, they're carrying the pressure that their body and mind was never meant to hold nonstop, right? So they're leading
mhm.
teams, they're caring for their families, they're solving problems, they're holding
Yeah,
emotions, managing schedules, all the things,
yep.
right? Being strong for
Everything for
everyone
everyone.
else. Exactly.
Mhm.
And then the
Yeah.
body starts to speak as like through anxiety, fatigue, irritability, we also have like the life
No.
changes, all of the other stuff, insomnia. And then there's that disconnection. I think the big thing is the disconnection from joy. And I would say I saw that in my 20s and 30s going through burnout. And the industry also was like, I'm so disconnected from this. Like, I should be happy, right? And
Right.
I don't think of burnout as a failure of character. It's accumulated overload is what it is on the system. And it's just
Absolutely,
built
and
up.
yeah, and it's all just from trying to do your best, right? Like, trying to be the best that you can possibly be. You really resonated with me there for a second with the joy. This is the thing I was just sort of alluding to earlier in terms of, like, the constant, like, the onion of our healing is there's a layer, and then there's the next layer and the next layer, and so the most recent one that I'm finding is that I have a really hard time with playfulness and with playing and with joy. And it has a lot to do with how I was raised and what the expectations are around me and where I believe my value is. And I've come so far in getting past that but I still struggle with, where do I find my joy? What does it come from if it's not from work? Because it shouldn't always just be from work. Like, you can love the work that you do, and there can be a lot of passion and fulfillment that comes from it, but there's more, right? And so where do you get that? And then, should it be bound to people, because those people can be extricated, your choice or their choice, or, loss, or whatever that could look like. And so it can't just be that. So you have to find, how do you find your joy that's very much just about you versus other people? And I'm finding a hard time with that. And so I know others are as well. And even today, I asked a college class, like, what are you doing for fun? Because creative expression, you mentioned that word. That's one of my buckets of self-care. And we talk about, what are you doing for fun? What is your passion? And this one particular class today couldn't answer me. It took them a very long time to start digging through what that looked like. And that scared me a little bit, because that's usually a group that's where they know what that is. They know what their passions are. And that particular group could not name that for me in that moment. So what do we do? How do we move towards finding that?
This is exactly the mission that I had starting inner design. It
How
was
about
just
that?
beautiful. So it's really about how we're internally organized, I think.
Mhm.
When people look at their life and they think, externally, I want to redesign my life, right? The thing is, we're missing the boat that there's the inner architect, or it means untouched. And the way that you're internally organized becomes the life that you keep producing. And so that's why we keep having this thing of like, people, I want to start over, I'm doing all this stuff. And then
Mhm.
they're going with maybe the adrenaline or the energy of whatever the outside is to feed them. But when you actually flip it around and have the internal part, I mean, joy is everything. Every sensation, emotion is something that comes from within. We know this. Oh, happiness, you can find it within. But what does that mean? We really aren't taught. Like, how do you access that? That's
Mhm.
where I go into the breath. The breath helps you to shape, your pacing and your nervous system, shaping out at the external. Your attention shapes the outcomes, and your identity shapes decisions. All of these things are part of us internally, and we don't have access to it, or we're not taught how to access it. And so, that's why we get stuck in those loops. But joy is really within. It's not the thing that you're doing outside that's giving it to you. It's just triggering something that's internal, right? It's that
Mhm.
outside moment is giving you like an entry point or an access point to get back the feeling that is inside of you. So it's really not that. I always talk about self-care. People like, I'm going for manicure, it's my
Yeah.
self-care or massage. They're good. It's not, I'm
Maybe.
not
Yeah.
nothing against it,
Maybe.
sure. But
Yep.
then we find ourselves in square one where we're just like, it
Mhm.
didn't
It's not
solve the
sustainable.
problem. It's not sustainable. It doesn't solve the actual problem. If you can find something that's simple, that's maybe available to you all the time, that is free,
Mhm.
like your breath, right? Then you can
Mhm. I say
actually,
that too.
well,
It's free.
I
You can
always
do it
say,
anywhere.
you can do it. You're carrying it around. It's literally under your nose all the time, right? And so it's always, holding you together. It's pleasant.
Mhm.
Those kind of things. Um, this has a different level of success that's not measured in the culture that we live in. And
Mhm.
so there comes a time, I think we all have, we live a life that the strategy we've been living from is no longer sustainable. It cannot carry you further. And so that's when I see a
Mhm.
lot of that that very end of the line burnout. And what are you going to do when the manicures and the massages stop working,
Mhm.
or you stop
Mhm.
feeling connected
Yep.
to things through joy? And it is simple. I love play. Play is part of the creative process. It's just something that is simply, accessible. When we look at kids, they're not, they may be scribbling around, drawing something. They're not looking at this and thinking, is grandma or mom going to stick this on the fridge and it's going to be something
Mhm.
that's great, a reward or an outcome from it. They're just in that moment, scribble, scrabble, they walk away. They enjoyed that for what it was. And so the process oriented side of creative expression is what the inner design method entails, along with mindfulness, along with the breath work. Because a lot of times I find people who don't feel ready or even safe to close their eyes and say, I'm going to go into a 20-minute meditation. They may
Mhm.
have, faced a lot of
Mhm.
trauma and stresses and all of those burdens. So let's do it with something that can get you there in a way that's, fun, playful, and
Mhm.
accessible.
So, yes, 100%. And you also you challenged me to think about something a little bit differently. I never thought about joy. When I do think about joy, I think about the thing that makes me feel happier, right? And so I've never really considered breath bringing me be the thing to connect me to that joy versus the tangible thing that I'm going and doing, or the feeling that I get from that thing, or that activity typically is what I'm thinking about when I'm talking about joy. But you're right, it's that intrinsic sort of feeling that has to come from somewhere, and it doesn't have to be activity, or there was this switch that was flipped based on this activity, or whatever that looks like. So talk more about like how your breath work can bring you to the place of finding your joy.
So breath, actually, this is part of the whole method also. It's sleep, but actually throughout the day, based off of like what we're eating, how active we are doing. If you just think about it, if you just get up and run right now,
Mhm.
step
Yep.
outside and go for a run, your breath all of a sudden starts to pick up pace. And then, if depending how often you do that, you may be panting, right? And this is your body's way of just regulating back to yourself. And also I think when you watch children, and see them go through their
Mhm.
emotions. You watch them in a tantrum. You watch them when they're crying, when they're happy. You understand the breath because they're so with it. They haven't learned
Mhm.
to condition or distract from their body and their experiences. And they move through it so fast, right? So like a kid who's having a tantrum and just stomps their foot, usually you hear that and they just like let it out
Mhm.
or grunt or something. And the breath that comes with that is actually the release that actually just gave them that opportunity. Or when we sigh, like it's that maybe you're carrying something heavy, sadness, grief, right? Actually, your breath is mimicking it and also helping you cope with it. So once we understand that there's different breathing rhythms, you can
Mhm.
actually hack yourself
Mhm.
and say,
Yep.
oh, I'm carrying this thing. Like, what would it feel like if I just let out a couple big sighs? And then the inhalation gets a little deeper, and then we're letting in more energy. And then that helps us move through that feeling and that emotion. Likewise, when we're, feeling joy and happy, the breath is so smooth. It's a lot more inhale. When you smell flowers and they make you happy, it's that whole experience is the breath. And so just having, a method that you can practice and you can become aware and then, start to notice this is happening to me. Oh, I wonder if I do this thing, if I do a couple of deep breaths, or I do a long exhalation, or I just stomp my foot, huff and puff for a little while. Do I feel some relief? So it's part of that. It's really part of
Yeah.
that
So it's
understanding.
it's releasing the energy, so that like the stomping, and like there's a somatic piece to that. I love that. And then in terms of like the breath, it's about creating that. I'm trying to figure out how do I want to put this, but it's really, I think, about creating that feeling, right? That zen is really your joy. So you can use that, and I talk about that hack all the time. You can use that to rewire your systems. If you are in a moment of stress, you get to pull that back down. But that's how I typically am using it, is how do you get out of this and get into this, versus like, we just get to be here. If you want to feel this way, then just go here. You get to do that instead of reacting, or use your emotional intelligence or whatever that is to recognize and reflect on what's happening, and then pull that back through in a way that's going to impact you and then the people around you in the way that you're hoping to. I think that's also a really good parenting tips. If your children are struggling, or if you are struggling, you're going to see it on the people around you, including your children. And then if you can bring that back in for yourself, you get to deliver that to them as well.
Yes, absolutely. I love how you said that too. And it really, I think that what happens is we feel like there's nowhere to lean, or like you said, this moment. And I think sometimes we think, I'll say it this way, facing something like anxiety,
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, this person has anxiety, or I'm having anxiety around this. It's actually intelligent feedback. And so it's
Uh-huh.
showing up that there's something that in our system that needs safety or truth or rhythm or support, whatever it might be,
Hmm.
right? It's not asking us to push harder or push it away. I like how you
Hmm.
said, just asking us we get to just be here with it. So
Hmm.
sometimes we get to be here with the thing that's pleasant, and we also at that point we can be escaping it. And sometimes when there's unpleasant things, of course we definitely
Yeah.
want to escape it, right? So sometimes
Right.
instead of asking yourself, or instead of pushing yourself harder, It's just asking yourself, can I listen deeper to this? Can I just
Mm,
be with this? It's going to pass. It's just
mhm,
like in the ocean, you just see the waves. You can't just
mm.
catch on and be like, I got this wave forever. You watch surfers, they would love that. Just like,
Always, always. And I think too that that brings up for me anyway, we talk about anxiety as a society and everybody and the level of anxiety that we're struggling with. And I think that like, I don't want to take away from this. I do think that there are anxiety disorders and there are people that have for real struggles around anxiety and they need clinical help, whether that is through medication or counseling or, whatever that looks like. But I also think that we've put a label that doesn't always fit. And it comes back to that resiliency that you were sort of referring to. And when things get uncomfortable or we don't like the space that we're in. And so we want to run away from that and we want to not be there. And we'll call it anxiety because we're struggling with that versus just figuring out how to cope with that and how to move through that in a way that's really successful for you. And we see it a lot with teenagers and younger kids, but we're seeing it in adults too. Like I have anxiety. But where I really want to go with that is self-care. So when I talk about self-care, there's this one category that I call the foundations that, I don't think that the categories are equal. I think there's one that's more important, and that includes sleep and nutrition and movement of your body. And so if we are living in this state of what I'm doing in quotes is anxiety, maybe we really do have this thing that needs to be dealt with, or maybe we're not giving our body this tool that we have, the equipment that it needs to handle the challenges and the things that are making us uncomfortable because we don't have the skills. We don't have the coping mechanisms. We don't have the sleep that we need. We don't have the proper nutrition. We haven't moved our body. And so all this energy is stuck in here. And so without those things, you can't move through that anxiety either. And so you've got to get all of that in place and make that as sustainable so that you then can start practicing. I think it probably could be in tandem, but you could then start practicing things like breath work or meditation or visualization or whatever that looks like for you so that you can start to have those coping mechanisms, which then creates your resiliency. How do you feel about that?
yes, yes. I think
I wasn't expecting that tangent.
a lot of things, of course, there's a load that we're carrying that's real. And
Mm.
like you
Mm-hmm.
said, some people really do have, different needs, different situations that they're in and different issues. And then looking at it also as like, like I said, the wave, that sometimes these are passing emotions and they're not necessarily the mental health issue that needs to be addressed. There's other things and other layers. And I like how you called it coping, but I would call it regulation.
Right.
Because
Right.
I look
Yes.
at coping in a different way. I think coping is a lot of times gets a bad rap. You're like, "Oh my god, you did these. You had unhealthy coping mechanisms," right? But
Mm-hmm.
I always say if
Yeah.
you're coping, kinda like give yourself a pat on the back. Like you're getting through something that your whole being is not ready to get through, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
psychologically, mentally, physiologically, biologically. You're not dealing with what is at hand. And so your body is just and your mind is like, let me just do this thing to cope, right? And sometimes they look like unhealthy things. And that at the end of that coping, if we could put like a timeline on it, it's like, okay, I got through this incident, this issue, it could be trauma, and I did buy these avenues and I don't feel like they're serving me anymore. That's the
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy part is knowing
Right.
where am I in the regulation of myself, right? Can I
Mm-hmm.
regulate myself now doing something else? And again, it comes back to the same thing. It's like, eating ice cream, that's my ice cream or chocolate. Those are my little vices, right? Gives my brain like the feel
Mm-hmm.
good hormones and
Mm-hmm.
chemistry, which at that point, I grabbed it and maybe I had access to that and I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm just gonna go through this, right? But those feel good chemistry is not in the ice cream, right? It's in me, it's in my brain. And so can I find something else that can trigger the production
Mm-hmm.
of the chemistry I need? And I love the fact that you break it down to the simple things. Yes, like sleep, food, and like some kind of activity, movement, energy flowing through your body, whatever that looks like for you, right? These are fundamental basic needs. So I think they're a little different than self-care in that side. That's the
Yeah.
parts that are
Yep.
regulating us. But let's say somebody, God forbid, something happens, they're in an accident physically, they're not able to move, they're not even maybe able to go and access their own food. They're at the mercy of something because of the trauma. So at that point, coping with whatever they can until they can get to a different situation when that timeline ends, like I said, where now they have access to regulate in a different way. But
And
it
it's all
all starts with
relative,
awareness.
right?
It's
Yeah.
definitely relative. And I think it takes a certain amount of awareness
Mhm.
to be able to say, I really want to look at this, or I really feel not good about this, or I feel great doing this thing. I want to get back to it, or I used to do these things that were great. We all have that, not with
Mhm.
regret, with like a lot of self compassion of like, there's things that I had access to at other points in my life. I would love to
Yes.
have access to. Maybe
Yep.
I don't have that ability, time, money,
Mhm.
physical, whatever it is that's holding you back,
Mhm.
but something else that could be maybe in line with that, that could also go
Mhm.
back, trigger those
Yes.
same feel good things. And I think that's why creativity to me is so important because we'll do creativity without the outcome being important. So,
Mhm.
I tell people in workshops, just it doesn't matter. We're going to maybe, if you don't love it,
Yep.
you can throw it out. Just go
Yep.
through this process with me. Just, we're going to breathe and we're just going to go through this process.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm. I love that. I also think there's something to be said about grace in terms of like the coping and the strategies that you're going to use because you're right. Our cycles change what's available to us now. When I go in and talk to the college students, lifting weights is a really trendy thing, which I am super on board with this trend for coping for especially young men, but the women are getting into it too. And it's something that I used to love to do like from a really like a powerlifting standpoint with a squat rack and the heavy weights. And I'm just not doing that these days. And I look at them and I start talking to them when we're talking about movement and what they're doing. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should. And like, stop it. You're not doing that right now. You're not in that space in your life. And maybe someday you'll go back to some of it, but you're not going to be a power lifter. We're not going to do that. So it's just a matter of finding the thing that will work for you and then giving yourself the grace to be okay with where that is and what that means for you right now.
yes, yes. I think that what we're saying here is it's the physiological first and then the psychological kind of
Mm.
follows that. And
Mhm.
that's the difference between dysregulation and regulation. That's kind of that
Yes.
path of
Yep.
looking at it, right?
Yeah.
I
And
also feel
also
it a
the
lot
thing
of
that breaks the
times.
cycle.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people are like, have positive thinking and that I don't disagree, but
Right? Yep.
you can't mindset your way out of a body that believes it's
Mhm.
under threat. So if you're
Yep.
in pain or you're struggling, mentally, emotionally, whatever it might
Sure.
be, you
Yep.
can't really get through that. You really need to be with your body. It's biology. And
Completely
then,
agree with that. You've got to get your body first and then you start to rewire, but there are things that you have to do. So my framework that I use is mindset medicine is we are acknowledging first. So you have to acknowledge what it is that's holding you up and then you have to surrender to it. And then you get to start rewiring, which then brings us to the manifestation or the creation of the new. So you're exactly right. You've got to get back to the basic before you can start making what is different about that situation or what we're going to change in that situation. I love that. Um, mm, I had a couple more nuggets, but I'm going to hold off on it. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about inner design and the work that you're doing with people and like what kind of people and how you're doing that work?
so inner design has been through a couple different phases. Like I said, I started with education. I still have a presence, quite prevalent presence in education, in the classroom, in
Nice.
professional development programs for educators. And then the whole aspect of it has actually scaled to getting into creative agencies, design firms, and then going to top corporations where CEOs and founders need some support. And so for me, I really think that everyone has access to their inner design. It's fundamental. It's already with you. We either, like say that, right? Either you design your life by, actually taking the action to design it, or it gets designed by default. Having that opportunity is really, important, I think, for everyone to have access to. Some of the fundamental things that I work on is that, understanding it's not about more hustle. It's not about, the punishment isn't the discipline. I'll say it that way too. Sometimes people are like, so invested in working out, like you were talking about, right? So rested power, having better performance that's internally driven. So that's kind of where, I go through that. Also, creativity to me is not a luxury. It's a lifeline. We all are
Mm-hmm.
creative people. We may not all be artists. We not may not feel we have a certain talent to create an outcome or output or whatever measurement we're looking at, right? But we all have some access to creative energy. It could just be something that you simply do in your home. I was just talking to somebody about, they organize their kitchen drawers certain ways.
Oh, I bet that felt
There's
so
so much
good.
beauty and yes, and it just looks so great. No one's going to see that but themselves, but their
Yep.
output of their energy to do something that felt good for themselves.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah,
that's
that makes
really,
good sense.
part of the program. Our methodology also is with realign, rewire, reframing things. So, and then
Mhm.
breath work. It's all starting with the breath because we're walking around with it. So, I like to talk about it more as breath awareness than breath work. Breath work sounds like I got to go to a retreat, I'm going to be on a
Yep,
yoga mat. And
yep,
then when we leave the yoga mat, like what happens? We all go and face that busy world out there. And
yep,
so,
we forget.
it's yeah, it's really about the integration of understanding, my breath awareness. It's going with me everywhere. What does it look like?
Fantastic, I love that. So, I think there's something on your website that people could pick up if they wanted. Is
Yes,
that accurate?
absolutely.
Okay,
The innerdesign.com. I have a free 5-minute reset, nervous system reset. So you can go through that process with me. And then, of course, there's workshops and all kinds of levels. I do still work one on one with people if they have a specific goal in mind. Yeah.
fantastic, thank you. I will also put that link in the show notes so that anybody can go and pick that up if they would like to. Anything else before we wrap up here? Is there anything else that you wanted to share or anything that we missed talking about? Just no pressure, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah. I
Fantastic.
think I think I'll say it this way, success that costs you your well-being is too expensive. And so that's
Mm,
one thing I like people to think about, like who you really are, because you're carrying yourself through everything. And when
yeah.
you are better just for yourself, you're better out there for the world also.
Say that one more time. Success that costs.
That costs your well-being is too expensive.
I love that. There's a quote by a blogger that I love, Katie Reed. This is when I talk about self care. And it's specifically about self care. She says that self care is giving the world the best of you, not the rest of you. And I feel like that is the thing that helps people understand that you have to stop and do this work. You have to take care of yourself if you want to be the best person. You want to show up the way that you're hoping that you show up in the world. And I think that yours very much aligns with that and it's pretty in your face about like this is a thing that's costing you resources, whether that is time or money or health or whatever that looks like. If you're not doing that work or setting those boundaries, then you're going to pay that price.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, Rubina, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. So, everyone, I will put the link for Rubina's website in the show notes. There's lots of good stuff there. I was just digging through it right before our podcast started, and she's got lots and lots of good and creative things on her website. So, go check that out. I will see everyone soon. Thank you so much. Did you catch that last line? Success that costs you your well being is too expensive. I'm going to be sitting with that for a little while, and I encourage you to do the same. Friends, if today's episode is stirring something in you, that is not an accident. That is your nervous system asking for something different. And if you're ready to stop white knuckling it and actually do the work, I want you to come find me on Substack. That is where I go deep every single week with letters, somatic practices, oracle pulls, prescriptions, you name it, all of it lives there. And the link for that is in the show notes. And then one more thing, the emotional ER, my one-on-one session where we regulate, we download, we build the actual prescription for what you need right now is currently $50 off. But that ends later this week. If you have been on the fence, this is your moment. Do not miss out. The link for that is also in the show notes. Until next time, I love you.